Tonight's sleep story takes us to a quiet coastal village where soft lamplight glows against the evening mist. In English, benevolent usually describes a person who is kind and generous in spirit. A benevolent person is someone who helps others freely, who offers warmth without expecting anything in return. Welcome to English Through Stories. Tonight, the word benevolent will appear throughout this story, woven naturally into the narrative rhythm. You'll hear it describe kind and generous people, benevolent gestures, and the gentle atmosphere their kindness creates. Let your breath soften just a little. Feel your shoulders release the weight of the day. Let the quiet around you settle into your body and allow a sense of calm to drift in as the story begins. The harbour was quiet as evening settled over the village. Soft grey clouds hung low over the water, and the air smelled of salt and wet stone. A gentle wind moved through the narrow streets, carrying the sound of distant bells from the lighthouse. Emma walked slowly along the waterfront, her hands tucked into the pockets of her coat. She had arrived in the village only that morning, seeking a few days of rest away from the noise of the city. She had found a small guest house near the harbour, run by a benevolent woman named Clara, who had welcomed her with tea and warm bread. Clara's smile had been genuine, her kindness immediate and unhurried. Emma had felt the tension in her shoulders ease the moment she stepped inside. The room Clara offered was simple but comfortable, with a window that looked out over the water. Clara had asked no questions, only offered a benevolent gesture of understanding, as if she knew Emma needed quiet more than conversation. Now, as the light faded, Emma wandered along the stone path that lined the harbour. Fishing boats rocked gently at their moorings, their painted hulls reflecting the soft glow of the street lamps. A few villagers passed by, nodding in greeting. One older man paused to offer directions to a cafe that served good soup, his tone kind and unhurried. His benevolent manner reminded Emma of her grandfather, who had always spoken with the same gentle patience. She found the cafe tucked between two stone buildings, its windows fogged with warmth. Inside, the air smelled of bread and herbs. A young woman behind the counter smiled and brought Emma a bowl of soup without being asked, as if she had been expecting her. The soup was rich and comforting, and Emma felt something inside her begin to soften. The benevolent welcome she had received since arriving felt almost unreal, as though the village itself had decided to offer her shelter. After dinner, Emma walked back toward the guest house. The mist had thickened, wrapping the village in a soft, quiet blanket. The street lamps glowed like small moons, their light diffused and gentle. She paused near a low stone wall and looked out at the harbour. The water was still, reflecting the dim shapes of the boats and the faint outline of the hills beyond. A figure appeared beside her, an elderly man with a weathered face and kind eyes. He wore a heavy coat and carried a walking stick, and he nodded to her in greeting. "Beautiful evening," he said softly. Emma agreed, and they stood together in comfortable silence. After a moment, the man spoke again. "This village has always been a place for those who need rest," he said. "The people here understand that sometimes kindness is the only gift that matters." Emma smiled. She could feel the truth of his words in the way the villagers had treated her. Every interaction had been marked by a benevolent spirit, a quiet generosity then asked for nothing in return. The man introduced himself as Thomas. He had lived in the village all his life, he said, and had seen many travelers come seeking peace. "We try to offer what we can," he said simply. His benevolent nature was evident in the gentle way he spoke, in the patience of his presence. Thomas told her about the village, about the fishing families who had lived there for generations, about the lighthouse keeper who still tended the light by hand. He spoke of the small school where children learned to read by the sea, and the bakery that opened before dawn to fill the streets with the smell of fresh bread. Each detail painted a picture of a community held together by care and quiet kindness. Emma listened, feeling a warmth settle in her chest. The benevolent care these people showed one another was something rare, something she hadn't realized she was searching for. The next morning, Emma woke to soft sunlight filtering through the curtains. The mist had lifted, and the sky was pale blue. She dressed and went downstairs, where Clara had set out breakfast: fresh bread, butter, honey, and tea. Clara moved quietly through the kitchen, her presence calm and steady. She asked Emma if she had slept well, and when Emma said yes, Clara smiled. "The sea air helps," she said, "and the quiet." After breakfast, Emma walked through the village. She passed the bakery, where a benevolent baker offered her a warm roll and refused payment. "For a new friend," he said with a wink. She wandered through the narrow streets, admiring the small gardens tucked behind stone walls, the flowers still blooming despite the lateness of the season. An older woman tending her garden looked up and waved, her benevolent expression open and warm. Emma found herself drawn to the lighthouse at the edge of the village. The path wound along the cliffs, and the air grew cooler as she climbed. The lighthouse stood tall and white against the sky, its paint chipped, but its structure solid. She knocked on the door, and a moment later, it opened to reveal a man in his 50s, with graying hair and a gentle smile. "Come in," he said. "I'm John." John's home was filled with books and maps, with charts of the tides and sketches of the coastline. He offered Emma tea, and they sat by the window, looking out at the endless expanse of water. John spoke of his work, of the ships he guided safely to shore, of the storms he had weathered. But what struck Emma most was his benevolent attitude toward his role. He did not speak of duty or obligation, but of care. "I watch over them," he said simply. "It's a kind of friendship, even if we never meet." Emma spent the afternoon exploring the rocky shore below the lighthouse. The tide was out, revealing tidal pools filled with small crabs and bright anemones. She crouched beside the water, watching the tiny creatures move in their slow, deliberate way. The sound of the waves was rhythmic and soothing, and she lost track of time. When she returned to the village, the sun was low, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. She passed the small church at the center of town, its door open. Inside, candles flickered on the altar, and the air smelled of old wood and incense. A woman knelt in prayer, her head bowed. Emma sat quietly in one of the pews, letting the stillness settle around her. The space felt sacred, not because of religion, but because of the benevolent peace that seemed to fill it. Later, she returned to the cafe for dinner. The young woman who had served her the night before greeted her by name. "Emma," she said warmly, "I hoped you'd come back." They spoke briefly, and the woman, whose name was Sophie, told her about the village festival that would take place the following evening. "Everyone comes," she said. "It's a simple gathering, but it's our way of sharing what we have." Her benevolent invitation was sincere, and Emma found herself agreeing to attend. That night, as Emma lay in bed, she thought about the people she had met. Each one had offered something: a smile, a kind word, a moment of their time. Their benevolent acts were small, but they had accumulated into something larger, something that made her feel less alone. She realized that she had been carrying a heaviness she hadn't named, a weariness that came from too much isolation. Here, surrounded by strangers who treated her with such gentle care, she felt that weight beginning to lift. The next day was the festival. Emma woke early and helped Clara prepare food to bring: a simple stew with vegetables from the garden and fresh bread from the bakery. Clara worked with quiet efficiency, her benevolent nature evident in the care she took with every detail. "It's not about the food," Clara said. "It's about the gathering, about reminding each other that we're not alone." The festival was held in the village square under strings of lights that had been hung between the buildings. Tables were set up and people brought dishes to share. There was music. A few villagers played fiddles and guitars, and the sound drifted through the air like a gentle current. Children ran between the tables, their laughter bright and unguarded. Emma stood at the edge of the square, watching. Thomas appeared beside her, carrying 2 cups of cider. "For you," he said, handing her one. They stood together, observing the scene. "This is what we do," Thomas said. "We come together. We share what we have. It's not much, but it's everything." His benevolent words carried a truth that Emma felt deeply. As the evening progressed, Emma found herself drawn into the gathering. Sophie introduced her to others: the baker, the fisherman, the school teacher. Each person welcomed her with the same benevolent warmth she had come to expect. They asked her questions, but gently, without prying. They shared stories, laughter, and food. Emma felt herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months, perhaps years. At one point, John the lighthouse keeper stood and offered a toast. "To kindness," he said simply, "to the benevolent spirit that holds us together." Everyone raised their glasses, and Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She had come to this village seeking rest, but she had found something more, a reminder of what it meant to be part of a community, to be held by the benevolent care of others. The festival continued late into the night, but eventually the crowd began to thin. Emma helped Clara clean up, carrying dishes back to the guest house. The streets were quiet again, the lights still glowing softly overhead. Clara thanked her for helping, her benevolent gratitude sincere and warm. Back in her room, Emma sat by the window and looked out at the harbor. The water was dark and calm, the boats resting peacefully at their moorings. She thought about the past few days, about the people she had met, and the kindness they had shown her. She realized that their benevolent actions had not been grand or dramatic. They had been simple: a smile, a cup of tea, a shared meal. But those small acts had changed something in her. She thought about her life back in the city, about the isolation she had felt, the sense of disconnection. Here, in this quiet village, she had been reminded that kindness was not rare or impossible. It was everywhere, offered freely by benevolent people who understood the connection was what made life meaningful. Emma knew she would leave the village soon. Her Her time here was meant to be brief, just a few days of rest, but she also knew that she would carry something with her when she left. The memory of this benevolent place, the feeling of being welcomed and cared for, the understanding that she was not as alone as she had believed. On her last morning, Emma woke before dawn. She dressed quietly and walked down to the harbour. The sky was just beginning to lighten, and the air was cool and fresh. The village was still asleep, the streets empty and peaceful. She stood by the water, watching the light spread across the horizon. Thomas appeared beside her, as if he had known she would be there. They stood together in silence, watching the sun rise. "You'll come back," Thomas said softly. It was not a question. Emma nodded. She knew he was right. This village, with its benevolent people and quiet beauty, had given her something she couldn't name but would always remember. Later, after breakfast, Clara helped her pack. "You're always welcome here," Clara said, her benevolent kindness as steady as it had been the first day. Emma hugged her, feeling grateful beyond words. As she walked through the village one last time, people waved and called out goodbyes. The baker pressed another warm roll into her hands. Sophie hugged her and made her promise to write. John stood at the door of the lighthouse, raising a hand in farewell. Each gesture was small, but together they formed a tapestry of care that Emma would carry with her always. She left the village with a lighter heart, feeling the benevolent warmth of the people she had met settling into her bones like a gentle light. The world felt kinder now, more full of possibility. She had been reminded that goodness existed, that people still cared for one another, that a benevolent spirit could be found in the smallest, quietest places. And as she walked away, the village behind her, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that she could carry this benevolent kindness back into her own life, that she could offer it to others the way it had been offered to her. Hope that the world, despite everything, was still full of light. Thank you for listening with English Through Stories. Let the word benevolent stay with you as you rest. The story is complete now, and gentle music will continue to guide you deeper into sleep. Let go. Breathe softly and allow yourself to drift peacefully into dreams.